Well, it's certainly been an eventful year for Tesla. A lot has happened, both good and bad, that produced an interesting 2023 for the car company. The stock is up almost 110% year to date. But is the EV giant stock a buy, sell, or hold for investors in 2024? For more on the EV landscape in the year ahead, let's bring in Karl Brauer, iSeeCars.com executive analyst. It's all part of Yahoo Finance's 2024 investor guide. Karl, it has certainly been an eventful year for the EV space overall. It feels like we're sort of moving from sort of accelerated adoption to a bit of a pause going into next year, maybe a little more cautious moves there. How do you view this setting? How do you see this setting things up going into 2024?
I think that's an excellent assessment, that there has been a bit of a pause, maybe a second look at this industry and how quickly it's moving or not moving. We know that there's been some overcapacity for some of the automakers. They're producing more cars than they're selling. There's been some reduction in future plans to expand capacity and build new plants, or even take some shifts offline for certain vehicles like the Ford F-150 Lightning. I think it's a little bit of a kind of awakening for some of these automakers and the industry in general to just realize that even if EVs are the long-term future, they're not going to get there, and we're not going to get to this dominant role for them at the pace we thought we were 1 or 2 or 3 years ago.
And as we look at what's going to be happening with some of these tax incentives coming off, when you look at Tesla, what does that mean for the competitive space here? When you look at, you have established Tesla, you have some of these legacy brands as well, but then you also have some of these startups, and people are sort of hopping onto these trends, starting to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and that's really a big element, because the tax incentives that are driving a lot of these sales are shifting around. They shifted a bunch when the Inflation Reduction Act went through, and then they're shifting again on January 1st in some ways that are helpful for some companies and more hurtful for others. It appears that Tesla is going to be losing its tax benefit, the $7,500 credit, on January 1st, which seems odd because it's based on domestic production and Tesla's a very domestically oriented company. I've heard theories from people that suggest there was maybe a planned, maybe they didn't fill out the paperwork right, they want this to happen, telling everyone, oh, we're losing the $7,500 credit on the January 1st, better buy your car now. And then maybe January 5th, January 10th, there's a application process. Oh, wait, we just didn't dot the right I or cross the right T. We've got the $7,500 credit back. Not that Tesla or Elon would ever, maneuver a stunt like that to sell more cars, but some people are suspecting that could happen.
With that said, though, affordability has been a big issue in terms of adoption. Tesla, a lot more affordable with that $7,500 tax credit. We just showed the market share. 56.5% is what Tesla has right now. How does that shift without those incentives? Who do you think is likely to become a bigger player in 2024?
I think, Ford is pretty well positioned right now. GM needs to be building more cars. They keep launching cars, but not really building them. And then I feel like the Koreans are building some of the best EVs on the market right now, but they don't get the incentive either unless you lease. So it's actually, I don't really see any obvious benefits for any companies. Every one of them is facing some challenges. You've got incentives issues, you've got market issues, you've got pricing issues, macroeconomic factors that are slowing down the purchase of electric vehicles. I don't know. It's hard for me to think who would jump into any vacuum created by Tesla, but I would argue that we've seen Tesla's share, you're saying it's about 56, they're down to about half the market. And of course, they were the overwhelmingly dominant player just a few years ago. Every day, every month, every year, we see more cars entering this marketplace, making them less dominant.
And Karl, as we increasingly look at Tesla, almost more so as a tech company than a car company here, what does that mean in terms of expectations for next year and how it's positioning itself?
Well, they've got the Cybertruck coming, which a lot of people would love to think is going to tap into this highly profitable, massive volume truck market that Ford and Chevrolet and Dodge and Ram have been benefiting from for decades. I don't know if that's really going to work because the truck is very expensive and it looks like it's not very profitable for them, and it looks like they're going to take a while to ramp production. So I feel like they're not going to just be this natural. Plus, we've seen a lot of people in the truck market kind of pull back on buying these trucks when they started using them as real trucks. They didn't seem as attractive. What I would say is kind of Tesla's ace in the hole or ace in the PowerPoint maybe is the Supercharger network. That was a brilliant move for Elon to invest in that. Now we're seeing all the other car companies transition to the plug type that he's got in that Supercharger network, and he's starting to open it up to other companies and other cars. He could end up with quite the subscription model if he becomes the dominant player in the infrastructure and power supply field.
Karl, how do you think this recent recall for Tesla affects the brand's reputation?
Recalls are interesting. They cause a big, news headlines when they first happen, and they're pretty much forgotten, sometimes between hours or days later. This one particularly, it's going to be done mostly through over-the-air updates while people are sleeping at night. It's a lot of cars, but it's also going to be pretty easy to roll out. And there's been issues with his assisted driving technology, undeniably, but there isn't any massive event that was tied to this one event that was tied to this issue. So the bottom line is, like so many recalls, it'll cause a lot of news initially, and it'll be forgotten fairly quickly.
And certainly when you're a brand as in the news as Tesla is, it's always going to make more ripple effects than other brands. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Karl Brauer, iSeeCars.com executive analyst. Thank you so much.